Hey everyone and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today for this explainer, mainly because we're tackling a subject that I am just deeply passionate about. If you know me at all, you know I love learning, but honestly, even more than that, I love sharing what I learn. Today we're talking about something that might sound kind of serious on the surface, but in reality it can be incredibly creative, incredibly fun, and even viral. We're talking about the art of science communication, or divulgation. You know, doing the actual science, conducting the research, making those huge discoveries, that is fantastic, crucial work. But we have to bridge the gap between the laboratory and the living room. So we're going to look at how we can take these serious, heavy scientific concepts and totally transform them into something that everyday people can grasp, enjoy, and share. So what good is an incredible discovery if no one understands it? I really want you to think about that for a second. To me, this highlights what is essentially a tragedy in the academic and scientific worlds. Imagine someone uncovers something breathtaking about human emotions or artificial intelligence, or how we learn, or how we can literally save our environment. Now imagine that brilliant discovery gets completely trapped simply because the language used to describe it is totally inaccessible to like 99% of the population. It's heartbreaking. If a breakthrough happens but it can't be communicated to the actual people whose lives it will impact, it just loses so much of its immense power.
And this brings us to the real antagonist of our story today. This is where so much brilliant science goes to die. It gets locked away in these endless, unreadable PDFs, completely buried under paragraphs of incredibly weird, obscure words, and then it's presented in those painfully long presentations where, honestly, even the PowerPoint itself seems to be yawning. When science gets trapped in these boring, rigid formats, do you know who actually reads it? Maybe 3 severely sleep-deprived specialists at 2 in the morning, and that's about it. All that work, all that potential to literally change the world is confined to a dusty digital shelf just because it wasn't designed for human consumption. We've got to break it out of there.
All right, moving into section 1, translating into human language.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What actually is science communication? And just as importantly, what is it definitely not? Well, it's taking complex ideas and making them engaging so that people actually want to listen, read, watch, and share them. Now, please pay close attention to this next part because it's a huge misconception. It does not mean simplifying stupidly. We are not dumbing things down here. Your audience isn't stupid, they just don't happen to have a PhD in your highly specific niche, you know? True science communication is about translating high-level knowledge into human language. It's about connecting complex science directly with everyday life so that it resonates with people on a real, personal level.
Let me give you a perfect example of what I mean. Imagine reading the classic academic approach. A significant decrease in stress levels was observed through contemplative practices. I don't know about you, but when I hear that, it sounds like a depressed robot is giving me a status update. Now, compare that to the exact same underlying scientific idea, but translated. Breathing consciously a few minutes a day can help your brain stop feeling like it's in permanent final exam mode. Look at how much better that is. It's clear, it's totally relatable, and it paints an immediate picture. Your cousin can understand that translated version, and that right there is the magic of translating science into human.
Which brings us to section 2, formats for sharing science.
There are an arsenal of creative tools available to reach people today. Step 1 is your classic written media. You don't have to write a dry journal article, you can write a compelling blog, a column, or really just a punchy, informative caption on Instagram or Facebook. The main key? Just don't sound complicated. Step 2 takes us into the audiovisual world. We're talking YouTube, TikTok, Reels. You can explain an absolutely mind-blowing scientific concept in just 60 seconds. And a quick tip here. You do not necessarily have to dance around dressed as a giant atom to get attention in a video. Actually, scratch that. I mean, it might work, but it's definitely not required. You just need to be clear and captivating. And step 3 is audio, podcasts mostly. So let's look a little closer at some specific techniques you can use across all these formats.
What if I started a video by asking, did you know your brain loves to procrastinate because it wants to save energy? Boom. Just like that, I've grabbed your attention. Why? Because literally everyone procrastinates, we all feel slightly guilty about it, and suddenly I am offering a fascinating, science-based explanation for your everyday behavior. Using provocative questions like this, grounded in stuff people deal with every day, is a phenomenal way to spark instant curiosity right before you deliver the educational payload.
And this technique builds beautifully into longer-form content like audio. Podcasts are an incredible tool because they allow for multitasking. People listen while they're driving to work, washing the dishes, going for a run, or, let's be real, actively avoiding their homework. It feels like a chat between friends, but one that is packed with really interesting ideas. Think about hypothetical podcast titles like Coffee Chaos and Neuroscience or Surviving College with Psychology and Memes. They don't sound like stuffy lectures. They sound like a survival guide being delivered by a friend at a local coffee shop. That is exactly how you package science for the modern ear.
Moving on to Section 3, Humor, Stories, and Emotion.
Science absolutely does not have to be delivered as a bulleted list of facts. It can and should be told through stories. You can invent characters, use super vivid metaphors, or even build entire imaginary worlds to explain incredibly complex themes. Imagine explaining the physiological responses of anxiety as a thrilling narrative story, or relating a really heartwarming tale of a child discovering exactly how their own memory works. The hard truth is this: people will very quickly forget your raw data and statistics, but they will rarely, if ever, forget a compelling, emotional story that actually made them feel something.
And bringing emotion in, well, that also means bringing in humor. You can communicate the scientific process using straight-up comedy. Consider this gem. The thesis doesn't destroy you, it transforms you into a nocturnal creature that lives on coffee and APA references. If you have ever been through academia, you literally feel that in your bones. By leaning into this kind of wry humor, you're showing that our shared academic pain can actually be hilarious. It makes you, the communicator, way more relatable, and it naturally makes the audience lower their guard.
Here's another great punchline. We researchers have been working on this for months, and then someone summarizes it all in a 12-second TikTok. It's funny because it is painfully true, but the underlying lesson here is totally vital. When people laugh, they open up, and when they open up, they learn. Communicating science is never just about dumping information onto a page. It's about provoking genuine curiosity. It's about getting someone to chuckle, pause, and say, "Hey, that's actually really interesting."
And that brings us to Section 4, your turn to communicate.
Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. You're saying, I can't do this, I'm not an influencer. So let's be very, very clear about what you do not need. You don't need millions of followers, you don't need fame, and you absolutely do not need an expensive professional studio with $1,000 microphones and fancy lighting rigs. What you do need is a deep, genuine passion for sharing ideas. If you have that fire in your belly to help people understand the world just a little bit better, you already have exactly what it takes to start communicating science right this very second.
So many people mistakenly believe that science only lives inside these sterile, white-walled laboratories. But no, science lives everywhere. It lives in a messy classroom. It lives in the chemistry of your kitchen when you're cooking dinner. It lives in the physics and the programming of a video game. It lives in a raw, unedited podcast recorded straight into an iPhone, or just a random Instagram story uploaded at 2 a.m. Science permeates our entire existence, and it desperately needs creative people to spot it in those everyday moments and explain it in fresh, accessible ways.
So here is your rapid-fire action plan. If you're doing research, or honestly, if you just love learning about it, start writing. Tell some stories. Prop up your phone and make a quick video. Hit record on a voice memo and make a podcast. Create a really smart, funny meme. Use characters to explain tough concepts. Put some cool music behind your explanations. Use humor. And above all else, emote. Show that you actually care. Because when science manages to evoke emotion, it stops feeling distant and cold. And right there, in that exact moment of connection, is where something truly powerful happens. Knowledge actually begins to transform people's lives.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The world of science communication is wide open right now. It needs fresh voices. It needs creativity. The next great science communicator, the next person to make an incredibly complex topic suddenly click for thousands of people, might literally be sitting right here watching this explainer right now. And maybe your entire journey begins with something as simple as daring to tell a really good story. So I'll leave you with this powerful question to chew on. What is the story you are going to tell? Thank you so much for exploring this awesome topic with me today, and I honestly can't wait to see the amazing ideas you all share with the world.